I'm looking forward to this conversation. We're going to talk about Bitcoin, and we're not just going to talk about Bitcoin. We're going to talk about its impact on other aspects of life, every other aspect of life. I think a lot of people love hearing about the Bitcoin content, but the best part about Bitcoin is that it doesn't stop there. It continues in the rest of your life. So we have a very special guest here today who's going to remain pseudonymous. Sovereign, I guess we'll nickname you Sovereign. Thanks for joining. Glad to have you here. Um, Introduce yourself
Absolutely. My pleasure.
without your name.
Yeah. Sovereignty Max. Been in the Bitcoin space for just a little bit. I'm the main things that interested me are the sovereignty, obviously, the freedom, uh, censorship resistant, and immutable. So, it all in line with truth, I guess. Truth would summarize it well.
Great, good to hear. So how'd you start out? Give us a story with how you came to this position and how you came in this position that Bitcoin was those things. I think people that are new to Bitcoin have trouble understanding that. So what was the aha moment for you that you understood where those things connect?
I was very lucky for some reason, right when the pandemic started and they talked about all of the, um, you know, bills that were going to all the stimulus, this and that, it just clicked right away. It clicked right away. And to be honest, I first dug into gold. So I started buying gold, silver, understanding that it cannot be created out of thin air. And that inevitably, I believe, with the exposure to technology, anyone that is interested in sound money has to discover Bitcoin. So I pretty much came across a video. It was Anthony Pompliano. He was one of the first voices I heard in the space. And, back in early 2020, he was about it as far as I could tell. So at the end of the day, it was the sound money principles and understanding that we were about to be hit with a deluge of printing. And it was a light bulb moment. And as far as being able to elaborate on that moment any further, I really can't. It's just a matter of a gut instinct told me that money was about to become a problem, and I haven't stopped learning a single day since. It's completely rewired my brain. It's a mind virus, as they say. It's to the point where it's painful for me to spend $3 to $4 on something that I can forego, understanding that the opportunity cost in that choice is potentially massive. So it really put in line um, opportunity cost. And then the biggest thing for me was how you deal with your future self, right? The single most important transactions you will ever make are with your future self. And so that really rung true for me. And it's just been basically exploring that through Bitcoin and self improvement. Self improvement is a massive part of this whole thing.
So lead us into that self-improvement. So you brought it up. How has it changed your life after it began to rewire your brain? And what ways would you attribute um, Bitcoin to that? You could give that story.
Uh, I think the easiest way to sum it up is time preference. It really brought home that anything created instantaneously or with little effort has little value. And so, to me, it has to do with a holistic approach to a system, and the system I'd be referring to would be society. And so, when you have a system that operates on fundamentally broken concepts, you're just going to have those exacerbate and extrapolate through time to where they have to explode. And so time preference to me is the main thing, because everyone these days, it seems that they want it now and they want it exactly how they want it, and they're not really willing to put in the time, effort, and energy. And so Bitcoin to me is a reflection of effort, time, energy, and innovation, coupled with monetary media, which we really needed something to change, because I don't need to enumerate all the examples of why the current system does not work, but we know that it does not work. It works for the very few, and I am not one of those few. So I'd like to be able to save the economic value that I create by selling the only scarce resource I have, which is my time, in something that cannot be debased from underneath me.
Makes perfect sense to me. I think we see that first principles analysis of what is saving. Saving money is inherently taking energy from today and foregoing it for tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yep.
and I think to bring it back to the whole self-improvement and rewiring the brain, they I don't know who they is, but I've heard many times before about how the single greatest predictor of the single greatest predictor of a child's eventual success in adult life is their success or failure with the marshmallow test. More than IQ, more than
Mm.
college education. I've heard that that test has a better indicative property than ACTs, SATs, grade, everything else. For those that don't know the marshmallow test, it's basically like a 15 or 30-minute experiment or whatever, and the kid either is given, well, they're given two marshmallows that they can't touch, and if they don't touch them, or no, they're given one marshmallow. If they touch and eat the marshmallow, they get the one marshmallow. But the kids are told if you wait 30 minutes or you wait an hour or whatever in this room with no distractions, you'll get two. And so anyway, that simple
Yep.
little experiment um, really projects that forward. And so my larger point there being, from a first principles perspective, saving energy today for the second marshmallow in the future is the biggest indicator of a child's success. To me, it seems to be that it should be the biggest indicator of success for society. And I think,
Patience, right? Patience.
patience. Yeah, patience and inherently optimism, because it's inherently an
Mm.
optimistic action. You don't save money
That's a
for
great point.
right? You don't save money for a pessimistic future. If you're pessimistic on the future, you save in,
You're going to
uh,
spend it. You're going to
yeah,
spend it.
exactly. You're going to spend it, and if you're going to save in anything, you're not going to save in money because there's going to be no society to transact the money in. You're going to save in bullets and guns. So
I
saving money
think this is a
inherently
great
every
way to
way.
say it.
Yeah, yeah. So
For
anyway,
for
yeah,
I was just going to say, foregone consumption, it brings value of its own, but it has its own risks, right? And so that's why there is a premium expected to be applied to foregoing consumption. And I think these basic concepts that I thought I understood as a relatively well versed human being in a first world country, but it turns out that most people don't have the single slightest clue what money represents or what it means to them. And so
yeah,
I had to tear everything down and relearn it all.
yep. I think a lot of us Americans assume we're good with money because we're doing well. Like it's pretty easy here when you're born in America to go through life, go to college, get a good job, and make 50 to 80 or 100 grand a year, whatever of good wages at the time you
Middle
want.
class, middle
Yeah, yeah,
class,
middle class. It's not easy. You gotta work harder than the half the
grind.
population that doesn't work. But I think we get comfortable with that, and we assume that we must be really educated when it comes to money, and I don't think we necessarily are. So anyway, I fully agree with you there. So in what ways for you personally did you see this mindset shift, this Bitcoin transformation, this Bitcoin rewiring in your brain? In what ways did you see that improve your self-improvement, marshmallow score, whatever you want to call it? In what
Sure,
ways did that change your
sure.
life?
I like that. How it improved my marshmallow score was that it puts a real world example on something that you can then what do they say, play out, right? Or what do they say, game theory out. So at the end of the day, what it was for me was I would frequently, probably 3 to 4 times a week, go to a marijuana dispensary, right? Spend $30 to $40 to buy marijuana. And that wasn't my drug problem. That was like when I got better, but this was like interim. So I understood that if I took that $20 3 times a week and just invested that in myself rather than consuming it, not only could I make sure that my future was more secure, but I was improving my immediate health. And so again, I kind of touched on this. Opportunity cost to me is everything is opportunity cost. When someone chooses to put time and energy in one thing, they have to forego time and energy in another thing, thereby declaring that they value one thing over something else. And so it's all about opportunity cost for me. Was it more valuable to me to save $20 for the future or to smoke $20 to make it disappear? And so I started to really have to address those opportunity cost situations where, $5 doesn't seem like a lot 4 times a week at Starbucks. Again, $20 a week, $80 a month, $1,000 a year. $1,000 a year over 20 years is a material amount of money. And so it all comes down to time preference and opportunity cost for me.
That makes perfect sense. And it goes even deeper because and I think people tend to miss this. I'm sure you've thought of it, but for me, was an aha moment. It's like, okay, let's say $1,000 a year you're spending on whatever. But it's not just the money. It's it's the returns from the money. So yeah, that's $1,000, but if that
Yes.
would have compounded to
Yes.
5,000, so you got that 4,000. Okay, number one. Number two,
Yep.
the loss of time that you could have been building skills to increase your income, which then could have
Yeah.
compounded to even greater. And then you have to keep in mind that, in this particular case, you were doing something that, people debate about it, but you were doing something that
Sure.
distorts your brain in a certain way. And so what are the long-term health?
Isn't good for you physically.
Yeah. What
Period.
what I made a video on this recently about smoking, addiction in general, and that was my proposition. Like, what if I offered you $1 million, would you take it? Well, then it's like, okay, let's take the inverse of that. What if your obesity, smoking, marijuana in this case, what if that addiction eventually leads to $1 million in medical treatment or shortens your life by a single year? I mean, with marijuana, that's probably going to shorten your life less than obesity or smoking. But still, the larger point's the same. That I think you're spot on about opportunity costs, and I think people have to consider not just the principal capital that's put in,
Yep.
but the interest, quote unquote, atop that,
I,
and
I
the
didn't
loss
want to go
potential.
there, but you're
Yeah, but
100%
everything
correct. I,
else,
I didn't
yeah,
want to go there to muddy the waters, because at the end of the day, that is a variable insofar
yeah,
as whether it's a 3% CAGR or a fucking 20, pardon my language. So, yes, absolutely. That is actually more important, but I don't want to like turn people off by making things too complicated
yeah.
initially because again, it's an easy concept for us, compound interest, but for people who haven't steeped themselves in the world of finance and economics, compound interest, while it seems basic, it really is it's an eye opener once you run the numbers.
Yeah.
Run the numbers on a $5,000 initial investment, compounding at 10% per year over 20 years.
Yeah.
And you start to go, wait, this is actually real. So, yeah, eye opening.
And Bitcoin's even more dramatic. I remember back when I was really into stocks and mutual funds, for a few years, and I did all right. I was obsessed with CAGRs,
Yep.
interest. I thought 10 to 12% was great, but now I look at Bitcoin, and it's like a whole nother beast. It's like 3 to 5 times annual compound interest for what I would argue is less risk. It's so like it's just it takes delayed gratification to a whole nother level beyond
Yes.
what stock investing ever did to my brain, which is annoying at times. Like I went to the grocery store yesterday, bought $50 worth of food, and I hated it, frankly. I mean, it's like because I got stuff in the pantry and the fridge, and I was like, do I really need to go out
Mm-hmm.
to the store? I mean, I, I, I did, I bought it, and it's but one of the things I got was a steak, and it's like I got to treat myself once in a while. And that was part of my mindset. It's like, normally I don't eat that well because I'm trying to save money, but it's like at the same time I gotta reward myself. I gotta once in a while give
That
myself a second marshmallow so that I have the motivation to forego, more in the future. So anyway,
absolutely.
it's fascinating to think
I would
about.
argue though that
Yeah,
food is not something to skimp on.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
yeah. I refuse to eat shitty food. I just don't.
yeah,
But that's all a personal thing. I want to. I'll admit it. I want to look good as well as feel good. At the end of the day, the way you present yourself and the way you look is important in this world, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yep. I fully agree. So let's go back to your story a little bit. For those that don't know, so you mentioned the marijuana. I don't know how much you want to get into that story, but
Oh, I can get into anything. So I was
yeah,
a full
yeah.
blown heroin addict for over a decade. Full blown heroin addict. I've overdosed, clinically dead multiple times. My little brother overdosed and died. He was like my
Wow.
best friend. Lost my little brother to this fucking monster of a problem. So it's affected me as personally as anyone else on planet Earth. And what it has done, though, this is hard for people to accept when I say this, but I wouldn't change a thing. I wouldn't change a thing. Um, how things have played out have given me the resolve to effect change in my life that is meaningful. And what I mean by that is I stick to it day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, because it's the right thing to do. And I feel it in my soul, right? I'm being honest with my own life to myself. I'm not working at cross purposes towards myself. I am in line with my truth. And so as far as that goes, I'm not willing to compromise anything for what I've gained, for what I've gone through, right? I paid the price and now I have the reward. That reward is self confidence, belief, and conviction in the values that I hold true.
I'm very happy for you. Um, was did you come out of the heroin addiction? I know that it sounds like you had marijuana between now and then, maybe, I don't know if that was
Mm-hmm.
intentional or not, but at what point in that in life was that for you? Was that before you started reframing and like what's my question? My question is you coming out of the heroin addiction what led you to retrain your brain to consider these ideas of saving and opportunity cost in Bitcoin, or was it vice versa, or is it some sort of feedback loop? Like where in the timeline are we talking here?
Yeah. I like that you said feedback loop, because where I was going with this loop was chicken and egg. I do not know. I have no clue. What I would say is they're you know chirality. Do you know the term chirality?
Go ahead and explain it. Both is for
Basically,
me and everyone.
this is chirality, a mirror image, right? So it has to do with one is exactly the same as the other, but just reverse.
Yeah,
So that I don't know the order in which it happened. All I do know is that they reinforce each other.
yeah, yeah. I hear the same thing with other people. I've met people that have come out of a lot of alcoholics, a lot of former alcoholics, a lot with marijuana. Um, I think you're the first or second person I met regarding heroin, but for whatever reason, whether it's substance abuse or addiction to other things, I mean, because there are non-substance addictions too,
Hundred
from what,
percent
yeah,
pornography,
yeah, pornography would be one, entertainment would be one. I think in many ways,
gambling.
gambling, movies,
Here's the reality, though, Luke. I have to touch on this. It is a substance problem because it's the substance, the dopamine that your brain is releasing. It's just the methodology in which to extract that chemical, right?
yeah,
So it's all the same thing. It has to do with risk, right? I think that's what humans innately are excited by. Some are more risk averse than others, but at the end of the day, I like risk. That's obvious, given that I'm 100% invested in Bitcoin. I don't hold anything else. I don't hold
uh,
anything else. Don't get me wrong. I'm a poor pleb. So it's not like I've got a lot. I've got basically nothing. Actually, I just lost my keys last night in a boating accident. It was tragic.
yeah.
But at the end of the
I'm sorry to
day,
hear of your loss. Yes.
yeah, to me, it's the first time in my life as an adult that I've had belief that we can come out of the cycle that we've created ourselves. Prior to this, it was just nihilism. Like, okay, I'm going to get mine as much as I can, as fast as I can before it all goes away. Now I actually have firm conviction that we are meant for something better. Here's another crazy concept. I used to be an avowed atheist. I'm not saying I'm a Christian. I'm not saying I'm a Jew. I'm not saying I'm a Muslim, but I am 100% open, not the possibility, but the very likely probability that there is an intelligence greater than mine.
Wow.
That's pretty easy to admit. But I was so stuck in the to me, it's all about arrogance, using substances, being addicted. It's arrogance because you're choosing to say and demonstrate to people that you know better than everyone when the evidence says exactly the opposite. So it's just hubris, it's arrogance. And so, to me, they all mesh perfectly because addiction, high time preference, opportunity cost. It's all one and the same. And that's, I think I said the word holistic. I really believe in that term. It's a whole body approach. It can't just be, oh, you fixed your finances, but you're still eating like shit. And that's why, as a Bitcoin maximalist, which I am, I will shove down people's throats the truth, especially if it hurts them, because there's no other way to grow. You're not going to grow, Luke, if I blow smoke up your ass, right? You need to hear the hard truth. Agree?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, yeah, this is a pleasant surprise. I didn't know that. I mean, for those listening, we haven't talked before this call before, so this is a pleasant surprise to me. I didn't know that. But it's definitely not the first time I've heard this. And like I was saying earlier, I've heard this story many times over with many different people in many stages of
Mm-hmm.
life with many
Yeah.
different addictions. I've heard similar things that people I've heard people say that I used to go to church and now I'm coming back to church. I've heard people say I was a hardcore atheist, now I'm a hardcore Christian. I've heard people say, many people like yourself say, I don't know what I think, but I'm thinking,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah. There you go. I
that,
like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. And so I mean, good for you. I'm thrilled for you. Obviously, I'm a Christian, so I've got my worldview that there's a savior and his name's Jesus. But good for you thinking about it, and good for you
And
reflecting
I will
on
say
it.
this is,
That's
yeah, this is actually a massive growth for me to be able to say, I want to know Jesus Christ. And that's like, to me, to be able to say that is like, it's not really me. So again, it breaks down our walls of prejudice, because we see that not only is everyone just trying to do the same things, but they're trying to do it as good as they can, whether that is in line with your values or completely against it. People
yeah,
are just trying to accomplish their goals. Now, does that mean I need to support them? No, but that means I need to at least treat people with integrity, honesty, and respect when interacting. And I mean, there's none of that in the world right now. None.
yeah. That's amazing.
And I
That's
think I think faith goes a long ways towards bringing that. I think I needed to wrap it up with that. Faith goes a long way towards bringing that understanding, patience, kindness, compassion, and love to the world.
yeah. I fully agree with you. That's amazing to hear. Um, and I think the most amazing part of hearing you talk about that and say that is about how you were saying, with the ham, the chicken and the egg thing. That's a huge part of Christian theology, or in my personal worldview is about how that there is this kind of calling from within us that is hard to put a finger on, that's hard to explain. Like I think about that
But
for
we all
myself.
seek it. We all seek it. Isn't that
Yeah,
wild?
yeah,
Everyone on the planet Earth seeks something greater than themselves.
yeah,
Innately.
yeah, yeah. They seek something greater than themselves, and that's what the fall of man comes down to. That's what pride comes down to, is seeking self and making self God, making
Yeah.
making self
Yep.
and one's own hedonistic pleasures of self interest and this era as God itself. So wow, yeah, that's amazing to hear. And that's fascinating to hear because I get that question from Christians a lot. When I tell people that literally all the time, um, that I hear people come into faith or at least open to it. I mean, like again, this call, I had no idea.
Right.
I had no
Yeah.
idea until you brought this up. All I knew was that you were a recovering heroin addict and you wanted to talk to me and you thought you'd be great. So anyway, but it's it's fascinating how no matter where people come from, it's like the same story over and over. I hear I I saw there was this problem. I woke up and I started getting in shape or I started exercising and it's like I don't know what's happening and it's so it's so heartbreaking that something so simple like magic numbers on a screen is for many people a catalyst in taking the habits and
Yeah.
actions. Yeah, like it's really sad. But at the same time, for me, that's a huge part of why I do this and why I am so obsessed about this. Because I know the game theory here. I know the market incentives here. I know the economics, and I know
Hmm.
how probable it is that Bitcoin is probably going to have a perpetually larger and larger share of the global economy, and also therefore a perpetually larger and larger share of the global population using it. And I'm like, wow, if we're at a tenth of a percent, or a fifth of a percent, or whatever, if we're like at some minuscule amount of Bitcoin adoption, and almost every person I talk to within Bitcoin is making their life better. Granted, there's a lot of people that remain atheists. There's a lot of people that have addictions and lifestyles I wouldn't agree with, but that the portion of people within Bitcoin though that are improving their lives, whether it's on the Christian path or otherwise, and the proportion of people that are um, having families, and the proportion of people that have these interests, like you're saying, and are trying to improve their lives, it's just for me every single time it's like this amazing um, encouragement that it's like, wow, this is not. Frankly, that's my biggest fear. Like, what if Bitcoin
It's
succeeds?
real.
Yeah, it's real. It's real, and it's more than just the money, and it's more than
Yep.
just prosperity. Because that's my personal biggest fear. What if we succeed as Bitcoiners? We have this more prosperous future, but we create
But
like a
nothing's better.
but yeah, but we have this new Tower of Babel thing where yeah, everyone's more
Mm.
prosperous, 100 times richer than we are today, but we all just put on our headsets, engage in our addictions, inject ourselves, and become like vegetables.
Right.
That's my biggest
Right.
concern. Because, I mean, I think
It's a
to
fair
be
concern.
yeah. So anyway, hearing you say that, I know I'm going on a rant here, but um, anyway, hearing you say that, and yeah, it's a pleasant surprise because it's funny actually. This is I've been in the Bitcoin space 8 months now, and already I've been at multiple Bitcoin conferences and multiple bars in different countries, holding beers with a bunch of guys, and it's like they just want to talk to me about Jesus and faith and the workout
Right.
routine, and how they're trying to like mend relationships with their kids or their cousins.
Right. Right.
It's like
Yes. That's what
like
I see.
yeah, yeah. Anyway, it's just so surreal how mission work and Bitcoin work and helping others and humanitarian efforts. It's like it doesn't matter. It could be wherever in the world. It can be on my front porch here talking to you in Zoom, or it could be in a bar, somewhere. Anyway, I've said enough.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway,
We all have the same desires and needs on this planet as humans, right? And to me, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I think that's what it comes down to:
yeah,
love, shelter, food, blah blah blah. So I believe in our current iteration of society, we have strayed so far from the truth that began this experiment. I speak of America. We've strayed so far from that people are looking for any answer to make them feel better, even if it's just for that day. That answer comes in the form of entertainment that ends up making you question all sorts of stuff. So it's, you said it, incentives, right? The incentives today are to pay attention to what's dangled in front of your face. It's to spend your money as fast as you make it. It's to borrow money, and it's to numb your senses because of the pain that's being caused by whatever you want to call them, the elites, the leaders. But there is clearly two worlds on this planet right now: the haves and the have-nots. And it's the story as old as capitalism, I guess. The have and the have-nots. And uh, you know, I try to like tone this down when necessary, but I believe we're headed towards a bloody revolution. At the end of the day, I think this only ends with revolution. Those in power are not going to cede control peacefully, and yet they're going to lose the confidence of their constituents. Therefore, there will be a challenge. It will be a kinetic warfare fought in the streets with citizens and government. That's my belief.
it's not irrational. I mean, if we look at history, what happens? You have the dilution of money, forcing prices up faster than real productivity, and because
Mm-hmm.
of human nature, because of incentive structures, and because our human desire at every layer of society, not just like, oh, the elites in the back group, like everyday people. It's like in 2008, everyone wanted to bail out. We cried about it, we protested about it, but it's like we all want it because nobody wants their house prices going down, and that's how it happens. You divorce the cost of living so far from reality that eventually uh, people become so fed up with the current version of political energy, the current version of political currency and political will, and rule of
Hmm.
law, because rule of law is downstream of the money, that they just
It is.
topple everything. And I think perhaps the best example of this, not to get too dark, but the best example of this is of World War II. Um, we, there are so many stories of men, soldiers going out fighting and building in their empire and country of the time because they believe in 100 years things are going to be great. But then you compare that to something like the horrible example of Nazi Germany, and if you look back in history, you saw this precisely. The productivity, along with cost of living, skyrockets. People become entrapped. Property owners, in this case, Jewish people, didn't want to leave because they were entrapped. And then by the time they figured out what was going on, the borders already closed, and eventually the whole society cannibalized itself. And as the war continued on, and as the war got worse, the rate of destruction within increased. It's just we look at
Hmm.
it from today and we think, oh, they're different, they're barbaric because it like makes no sense. Why in a losing war effort would you escalate your own rate of destruction? But yet incentive structure. So anyway, all I have to say is that um, I, I,
Incentive structure.
I,
Yep.
yeah, I think you're right to some degree. I hope you're wrong in the larger degree. I hope this is a
I
series of,
hope I'm wrong too. I
yeah,
hope
yeah,
I'm wrong too.
yeah. But anyway, this has been a fascinating conversation. I really appreciate it. I know we have to go, but I
Yeah.
guess
I'd
yeah,
love to connect again, maybe with like a little bit more of a yeah, I've enjoyed this. I'll just leave it
yeah,
at that. I've enjoyed
yeah.
this.
I really appreciate it. Thank you for coming on and helping me, giving me another episode.
Yeah.
Really
No,
enjoyed
thank
hearing
you
your
for helping me
perspectives.
through the technical stuff.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, I'm glad you appreciate my videos and whatever. So I guess
yeah,
send them my
no,
contact.
honestly,
Uh-huh.
I just want to end it on this, Luke. You've been a really good new voice in the space. The optimism, the facts, the numbers, and then coupled with your quirky sense of humor, I'm digging it, man. It's been real good following you, and I look forward to following you for years to come.
Thank you, my friend. That means a lot. I appreciate the compliments. Yep. Ultimately, that's what it's about. It's about people. So I
Yes, it
wish you the
is.
best. I wish everyone the best. In your journey in recovering from addiction, what would be your one point of advice, or what would be your one encouragement for people out there? Let's say the heroin addicts, let's say the atheists, let's say the people that have similarities to the person you were, that want to be at least on the same trajectory, even if it manifests differently as you are. What would you recommend to them?
That's a really, really good question. And I want to like go off on a tangent, but I think that'll muddy the waters more so than not.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to try to do is answer it with a couple words and just words, and how you apply them is up to you. Humility, honesty, and transparency. If you embody those virtues and you have at least two decent people in your life, you will make it. If you embrace honesty, transparency, and virtue, it's operate on what you feel to be right. Because if you're operating under truth, chances are you'll do what you need to. And if you're not, you'll wipe yourself out like we need you to.
Thank you very much, my friend. I really appreciate the time, and best wishes to you and everyone listening that we continue to pursue truth to the best of our ability. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Been a pleasure, Luke. I look forward to speaking soon.
If Bitcoin starts having rapid periods of appreciation and there are rapid spikes in demand for Bitcoin education, and for Bitcoin advocates and advisors, it's going to be increasingly important that you have self-custody of those coins. So my message to you is please consider getting that self-custody. Now, you can do that on your own. There are plenty of free tutorials online. There's plenty of great work like that. But if you want somebody to help you with self-custody, if you want somebody to help you take cold storage of your Bitcoin, of your Satoshis, if you want somebody to help you set up a multi-sig vault, to set up an estate plan, to set up a plan for you as a person, an individual, as a business owner, as a charity, whatever the case. I work at the Bitcoin Advisor, and I'm happy to say that I really enjoy it. I love working with my clients. My job is literally to help people buy Bitcoin and secure it properly for years, decades, and generations to come. So if you want to learn about my services at the Bitcoin Advisor and what we do, you should click the link in the description. Here you can read a bit about what I do. You can book a free consultation with me. You can book a free meeting with me. I'll send you lots of free complimentary paperwork explaining how multi-sig vaults work, cold storage, giving you all the education you need. Everything's fully open source, what we do. Our main goal is education, helping get coins off exchanges, and people be able to not lose sleep at night when they buy and secure their Bitcoin. So you can feel free to book a meeting with me. The first one is free and complimentary, just to figure out what your priorities are and get that adjusted. But if that's something that could be used to you, I really highly encourage you to take self-custody, whether that's with me or not. Please just do it. But for the many of you that probably will eventually want a multi-sig collaborative custody vault, the Bitcoin Advisor could be the place to go. And so click the link in the description, check that out. Really appreciate your time.